Let's talk about what could be an incredible Australia-India Test series then. That first game, India went into it missing key players, missing the captain, missing two of the top three, missing Mohammad Shami, similar to when they were last in Australia, actually, when they're missing loads of key players. And then absolutely decimated Australia in that first game, which I'm sure no one saw it being that one-sided. Do you think they have? Do you think they have wounded Australia psychologically after that? The manner of the win.
100%. And think about what was it Michael Vaughan who said that, or Nasser Hussain spoke about how there could also be a little kind of there could be cracks in that Australian setup as well, where Hazelwood said something to the extent of you'll have to ask the batters that, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with whoever picked up on that you don't throw your teammates under the bus, about stuff like that. You kind of stay united, even if you aren't. You hold up that united front. So there's certainly stuff that's going up on there, and that's exactly what we started this podcast off with, right? And it's a volume versus value game. The volume, so much of the pool of incredible talent is so high in India, and the conviction is so high about beating anybody at their home, and at their backyard. Just gives us that kind of push to even kind of respond in a situation rather than being reactive. If it was a similar situation in a test match in the mid '90s or in the early 2000s, you could have could have been rest assured that the second innings wouldn't have been a 400 run innings. It would have been, at best a 170, maybe 200 kind of innings, and that team would have probably felt the pressure, right? So what you believe as a unit, you have you either see it as an opportunity where you've gotten that opposition team out for 100, 120, and then you say, you know what, we're going to make sure that we bury these guys, and that is the attitude, I think, with which this team exists in and operates from, and which is why we're seeing the kind of performances that we're seeing.
So looking ahead to that second test match then, what are you hearing? Rohit and Gill, are they possibly both going to be available?
Yeah, I think they will be available, and it'll be interesting to see who makes way. I think Dhruv Jurel will make way for both of them, and where does where do they land is what's interesting to see. I have a feeling, for me, this is what I think should happen. Um, it's interesting, but I think uh, Rohit and KL should bat in the top three, and I think Shubman should come down to number 5 or 6. And I feel like, so it'll be Yashasvi and Rohit or Rahul, and Rohit Rahul at number 3. That's the top three. Then number 4 Virat, number 5 Gill, number 6 Rishabh, number 7 Washington or Ashwin. Then number 8, 9, 10, 11, you have your Nitish Reddy and 3 fast bowlers. So that's a gun side according to me.
I agree. And when you mentioned there, you haven't even mentioned Jadeja. You've got Ashwin and Jadeja. But what do you make of them going with Washington ahead of the two great Indian spinners? It was a bold call, wasn't it?
Brave, very brave, and they're backing this youngster. And like, notwithstanding how incredibly well Washington Sundar is playing, I think Ashwin is one of the greatest bowlers of India of all time. And in my book, I wouldn't play a test match without Ashwin till he's done playing. If he can play a test match, I will make him play the test match. If you're playing on, I don't care if you're playing on a marble pitch, I would play Ashwin on that pitch.
So you wouldn't have made the call then, but it seemed to have worked.
It's worked, and I also think that, I don't know if form is a factor in this instance. I don't know if pegged bowler to bowler, Washi is bowling better than Ashwin at the moment. That could be the case, but Washi is also bowling exceptionally well. Washington's, is very accurate. His undercutters are coming out beautifully out of his hand. They're looking very deceptive. So he's been equally effective, and he's batted well as well. So, but if you just go back a series ago, like 5 test matches ago, Ashwin's got wickets by the buckets, and then he's got 100 as well. So it's for me, it just feels like the guy should play every test match. He deserves to play every test match. He's like the man's a legend. There's no business in my book. There's no business how he should be missing a test match.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think he's been hard done by sometimes when India go overseas, and he could have played even more Test matches, and he's just a gun, as you say.
And I
The
don't
other,
like even the World Test Championship, both the World Test Championship finals that happened in the last 4 or 5 years, he didn't play both of them. I was just flabbergasted. I was like, how do you not play the guy who's helped you get to the finals in the final? Like, where does common sense escape away in moments like that?
yeah, I agree. I think sometimes you have to play your best team. He is your best spinner,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter what conditions he should play. Be interesting to see how much he plays in this series. The other big event we've had in the last few days, which you were working on, is the IPL auction, which
Hmm.
isn't a cricket match, but for me, it's box office viewing every year because I think
I
it's
don't like.
riveting.
I personally don't like it
Really? Why?
because I I just think it's very dehumanizing. I think you're making people commodities, and I don't agree with that. I understand the numbers of it. I understand how box office it may feel. I just don't think it's very respectful on a human level. It's great from the outside if you're not on the inside experiencing it. I can tell you it's traumatic as someone to be a part of the auction. I've been there for 16 years, right? I've been I've never gone unsold, but I cannot imagine what it feels like to go unsold. As in, it's traumatic enough to just be a part of it, right? And you don't know how much you're going to earn. Like as a husband and as a father, you're like what you serve. If you're not playing for the country, that whole that whole gambit of being in the auctions is what puts food on the table for you and your family. So if and God forbid, and there's no science to this, Matt. They haven't figured out a science to this, right? Because you had Sam Curran going at 2 million dollars last year, and he's gone for $200,000 this year. You know what I mean? There's no science to it. It all depends on where you turn up at the auctions while the auctions are happening, right? So there are some guys who won't even get to play because, for example, like a Mayank Agarwal today, deserves to play in the IPL. He's pegged at his base price is 100,000 or a little less than 100,000 US dollars, but doesn't get picked because none of the teams have the purse to pick a player like him at this point in time. I don't think it's the matter of his ability or people thinking he's over the hill, but I think it's a matter of people being able to afford him or not. And that is and that's the thing. It's a deeply traumatic experience. And it dents your confidence as a not just as an athlete, but also as a human being. Because it questions your wherewithal to provide for your family and put food on the table for your family. So it's a deeply dehumanizing process is what I believe it is. And I truly hope that they move to some form of a hybrid, some form where a human being doesn't have to feel like a commodity, and his life, like his what he earns is not one is not put out there for the world to witness, because his worth is being defined on television. You know what I mean? These are very subliminal things, but they're actually being defined on a very human level. They're being defined on television, and it's deeply disrespectful, is what I feel.
So is it therefore, when you're in it and you're watching it, as you say, and you're looking at what my livelihood is going to be like for the following year or whatever, is it quite hard, not to take it personally then? For example, if one year for some reason you're completely undervalued compared to, say, some other players, even though you're playing well.
Of course, deeply. It impacts you so, like that's what I meant by when it says it impacts your confidence in such a massive way. The way you start perceiving yourself, right? It's okay to be on the outside and say, hey, you know what, this doesn't define you. But when you sleep with your soul, and when you wake up with your soul, and then you see yourself in the mirror, the question's gonna pop up. And if it keeps popping up every day, on some level, someday you're gonna say, is it true? And then if you entertain that thought, it could be a spiral downwards, which will be a very tough climb back up from.